I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and today I'm thrilled to be talking to Rebecca Wisocky all about the wonderful TV show Ghosts. And starting off in the way that you play Hetty, I think one of the things that always strikes me as so wonderful is there's all these little growths and evolutions that you're able to bring into her as a character, and yet you always foundationally keep her being Hetty at the same time. And a lot of times she might grow a little bit and then kind of snap back a little bit. So it's not even necessarily linear. And I was interested in several seasons into the show, kind of how you approach that with the fact that there's bigger moments and opportunities for growth so often.
Yeah, she's seen a lot of growth. I mean, I've argued that she's had the farthest to come, and she still has a long way to go. But to answer your question, those moments of frailty and blindness and fallibility and are the most interesting things to me as an actor in playing a character. And she has so many of them. So to keep the audience kind of one step ahead of her always seemed like a very wise thing to do. And it services the comedy with a character like Hetty, and it also serves the ways in which you're rooting for her to become a better person and to correct some of her wrongs and her blind spots. So, yeah.
It's also so great because you get to play around with a lot of contradictions in a character like her because even if she realizes she's wrong, she's not going to admit it, or she might change course and have a different direction that she's now thinking. And so, what's that space really given you with a character where you can constantly contradict yourself and their actions and their choices?
It's gold. It's comedy gold, first of all. I mean, she changes her mind in the middle of a sentence, and she's such a hypocrite. But she really does have a tender heart, a tender, wounded heart, And again, it's the foundation of the character existed from jump. And I think that Joe Port and Joe Wiseman had a deep understanding of what the voice of this kind of creature would be. And it happens to be, play into some of my strong suits technically as an actor. And so it's just, I feel very lucky to be doing it and to be doing it going into our fifth season with our sixth season to come. So, yeah.
And even with what you just described about her voice and, kind of coinciding that with the idea that she can change her mind about something halfway through a sentence, I feel like that comes through in a lot of the vocal intonations that you play with. And you always kind of describe how it's something very musical to you. Do you feel like you have quite a natural rhythm in terms of that with her at this point?
I think so. She definitely has a cadence all her own that feels kind of born out of my understanding or simplistic misunderstanding of the time period, and her finickiness. Yeah, I tend to approach characters in a kind of musical or rhythmic way, which is ironic because I'm actually not at all a musician or a singer. I mean, I can kind of carry a tune, but I have so much respect for people who do musical theater, and I am not one of those people. So.
I mean, also with what you just mentioned about the musicality and that being a way into the voice, I've also heard you describe it as the way that you think about a lot of the group ensemble scenes, like what's the
Yeah.
sound of the music that we're trying to create today. And so when you look at a lot of those ensemble scenes, how do you figure out the answer to that for yourself?
Well, we're also unique. And when they constructed the world of ghosts, they thought very, I think they once said that they originally had just 40 different, types from different periods in history. And all of them would have made probably wonderful, different versions of our show. But they chose very wisely in that everyone brings something different to the table. And all of these actors, Liz Barnes and Tennis Valley, I think, if I may say so myself, cast the show so beautifully and continue to cast all the guest actors so beautifully, where no one's really in competition. Everyone has a unique point of view, a unique way in which they lie at any given moment. And we feel like an orchestra. It's rare that a show on television has 10 major characters, and we're often in the same very small room at the same time. And so it's lucky that we all understand the give and take about how to be a good teammate, how to, be a good ensemble member, and when, how the best way to have the person next to you shine, yeah.
And going back to something that you were just mentioning before about, your knowledge of the time period, how in depth did you find it helpful to get versus kind of stepping back a little bit? Because obviously she's lived in the house so many decades since that point as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all kind of became kind of armchair historians, and I am fascinated by that period. And I read a lot of literature from that period and read a lot of etiquette books and things from that period. And I mean, I think I have I think I have a period face, which is a nice way of saying I don't quite necessarily fit into the aesthetic norms of 2025. But I'm grateful for that because I love doing period work and I love this particular period. But she has changed so much there. And boy, this season she changes quite a bit. she in the Halloween episode, she reveals some rather unexpected special skills, which I can't tease more than that, but I think they'll definitely surprise you. So she's assimilated an odd, grab bag of things and sayings and proclivities, I mean, we know that she's she's become rather randy from being kind of buttoned up, and she had her sexual awakening, and she went and ran with it. So we have a lot of fun having her be a hypersexual creature. And yeah, yeah. So she'll continue to change, but in very weird ways. Yeah.
Was like it all started with a washing machine one day.
Ah, yes. As it does for most young women. No, probably not. But yeah, that's been a lot of fun.
Also, with what you just mentioned about part of the research early on being etiquette books, I imagine for someone like Hetty, that was actually a really valuable resource. What were some of the details that you pulled from that part of the research into playing her?
Oh, well, it's incredibly important for someone like Hetty. That was her stock in trade. I mean, that was the coin of the realm is has how well you behaved and how it did or did not, imply your status. So I remember, boy, I read a bunch of them, but there's one that I think was called What Would Mrs. Astor Do? And I remember there's lots of peculiar things that I would always try to throw at the writers, like there's a whole art form, can't remember what it's called, of like martial arts fighting with the things you might happen to have at hand, like an umbrella, or there was a whole thing about ladies' hat pins, and they had to be made illegal at a certain point because women were actually using them to defend themselves. So just little tidbits like that.
Also, with what you were describing about, the fact that obviously she had her language and her cultural references for her time period, but she's picked up so many things, and there's so many things in the modern day that she understands. She watches TV shows, she knows what the internet is, she understands the concept of a smartphone. When you look at the scripts and you look at any given scene, how do you personally look at it and think, okay, what would her cultural reference point be? Because there are still modern technologies and modern things that she also hasn't heard, or a turn of phrase that nobody's said in front of her before.
Yeah, I mean, she'll know incredibly intricate things about the internet or about a television program. She's a rabid television addict. But then she'll turn around and say, "What's a cat cafe?" Like there's certain things that are potentially she would deem beneath her that she has no idea or chooses not to know what they mean. But again, those contradictions are where all the good comedy lies. So
I love her addiction to TV shows. Do you have like ideas in your head of TV shows even beyond what they give you in the scripts that you think she's probably a rabid fan of?
oh, all of the juicy, romance, and she got super into Survivor last year, as you know, so she likes the competition shows. But the Bodices and Barons one is that's the pinnacle for her.
I also love the fact that with an ensemble like that, there's so many opportunities for these really special individual relationships with all of the ghosts. And I think, especially with Thor and Sisapsis, because they watched her grow up and they saw her go through her living life as a human before even becoming a ghost, there's that really beautiful protectiveness that they have towards her as well. And so, how does that shape a slightly different relationship with the two of them for you?
Well, with many of the ghosts, I mean, also with Isaac, Isaac would have watched her grow up, and it's a unique position that Hetty has that the other ghosts don't necessarily have, and that they knew her before she became so tight and so miserable. They knew what her life might have been had she been born at a different time or married a different man, or been less concerned with money, or feeling less the need to be concerned with money. So there's a lot of that still to explore. I love the relationship with Thor, and we've visited that a couple times. I love that sweet, fatherly, big brotherly, thing that he has with her. And I think there's one that's still to emerge as to what Sisapis's relationship with a young Hetty would be. Roman and I like to think that we read Shakespeare together or something, or that maybe he had a crush on Hetty when she was 13 or something, or yeah, they've yet to get into that, and I hope that they do. We've said this many times, but there's thousands of years of history to deal with, and dealing with those periods of time that are not contemporary, in which some of us were alive and some of us were already ghosts. I think those are really fertile little, pockets of flashbacks that I hope we get into more.
I also think along the lines of what you were just talking about of, there's this idea of who she could have been, but she ended up having to be someone who was quite constricted. We get to see these little ways in which she almost takes a breath around people when they know certain things or they learn certain things about her. And, when you really beautifully handled the storyline reveal of what her death actually was and how that played out with the rest of the ghosts, it feels like that kind of changed the dynamic for her a little bit. And how do you feel like plot points like that kind of open her up in a different way?
It lays her bare in a way that she does not enjoy. Uh, but it was necessary and it was done for her friend. And I think it was also 150 years later, time for her to actually experience and say out loud to a witness, I wish I had made a different choice. And I had value that I didn't realize I had to my child. And that was a pretty big deal for her. And I have to tell you, Mara, I still get messages every week from people that are just incredibly moving to me that, have been touched by suicide or suicidal ideation in their lives or in their families' lives. And um, it wasn't completely clear to me when we were shooting it that one aspect that would be so powerful is that you get a chance to hear from a character that you've come to know and love. You get to hear what their perspective is on that choice from the other side. I mean, I don't know that we've been able to do that before. And that's the language with which people are speaking to me about it, that it really helped them make a different decision. And my God, for, half-hour comedy to have that kind of, potential positive effect in someone's life, I'm very moved by that.
And it's also the fact that the writers didn't just write that and shoehorn it into one episode and then never touch upon, the outcome of that for Hetty ever again. There's this constant theme with her about feeling really unheard and unnoticed in her life. And, how does that carry through into being a ghost? And I actually felt like that really came into play in the episode on St. Hetty's Day, where she suddenly can be seen by humans for that day. And, how do you feel like that really shaped a lot of the way that it felt for her to have someone like Sunil suddenly actually physically see her, but also literally hear her?
I mean, we hit it right on the nose. It's a beautiful metaphor for her struggle and her misery and her confusion in her own life, and then having it be her ghost power. Although just for one single day out of the year, I'm making my plea that it could be for a couple more holidays, but it probably won't be. But yeah, I thought that was really lovely. I loved doing that. Asif Ali did such a great job playing Sunil. I hope that he comes back to see us. Um, yeah, that was a really lovely episode. And again, the metaphor was obviously not lost on me. Yeah.
It was also so kind of comedically delicious to watch how does Hetty respond to a human seeing her and then trying to flirt with her at the
Yeah.
same time as well, because she's still trying to keep the massive secret of, but I'm a ghost. So obviously when he tries to kiss her, she knows that they physically can't touch and engage in
I
that
know.
way. And so what was a lot of the comedy that you almost found you could play in that episode as well?
So much. I mean, having to pretend that I just ate an entire pork chop and swallowed the bone. I mean, just having just it's like classic thing of like, who me? You're looking at me. I mean, that's just so fun. And again, he was a great scene partner, and everyone got to actually be happy for Hetty that she had a sweet little crushable moment. That was really sweet.
It also was so lovely getting to see Hetty and Jay interact face to face in a different way as well. And you could tell that kind of Hetty really enjoys it because this is someone that she's been watching for years at this point and has a genuine friendship and connection with through Sam kind of being their interim. And so, what did you find in playing those scenes?
Well, I mean, especially including the possession, the two seasons before as well. Yeah, Jay and Hetty have quite a bit of history at this point. I like those two together. Um, uh, but yeah, yeah. I also think it's notable at the end of that episode, that St. Hetty's Day episode, that I think at the end he runs screaming from the room, and we think it's going to be this big, great big calamity, and he's just, no, but you're a ghost, you're a freak, you're a ghost, and I remember very clearly like arguing for, not arguing, but feeling strongly that Hetty should just really stand firm and be proud of this moment. And she turns and she says, no, I'm Hetty Woodstone and I built this house. And this is my story. And I happen to be sharing it with you. You're a wonderful man. Go find someone that actually appreciates you. And I love that she had that moment of very evolved, grounded self-worth.
Yeah. No, it's such a great moment. And then I also love the aspect of, she finally has this power. And when it doesn't initially dissipate at midnight, that kind of gives her that superiority that she loves sitting in
Yes.
before discovering, oh, actually, it does expire. And so
Oh,
what
yes.
did you find in just kind of her having that moment of superiority and then realizing, actually, my power isn't anywhere near as strong as some of the other ghosts
Oh
after
yeah,
all?
no, she's tier 7 at best. Yeah, no, I mean, but again, that's classic Ghost. I mean, just subvert the expectation and make someone lose everything that that they want more than anything in the world. I mean, it's just we're at our again, we have these lovely moments that have brought families together, and I think really affected change that we're very proud of. But at the end of the day, we're a zany wackadoo sitcom. This is a universe in which there exists a Latvian ghost trap, and even wackier things happen this season. And we love it. We feel like Muppet babies running around sometimes during some of those episodes. And that's, I think, some of the most fun.
And obviously, for that entire episode to take place, Hetty had to have not only discovered her Irish heritage, but to have kind of found a certain relationship and acceptance with it almost. And where did you feel like she needed to be at with that? Because at first, obviously, she's had very strong opinions about the Irish, but then she hears the music of Enya and starts to think differently over time.
Right. Well, of course. I mean, that's also very true to Hetty fashion, where she learns the lesson, but she learns it in all of the wrong ways. And she kind of gets it, but then she becomes this hibernophile and is just very, very pro-Irish. And Irish are now better than anyone else because she's one of them. So yeah, yeah, she always gets it just a little bit askew.
I also feel like you and Asher have had so much great material in this most recent season to play with in terms of, sometimes their previous romantic relationship doesn't come into play in their day to day, but then there's moments where, Trevor's excluding her from sitting at the ghost table at the restaurant because he doesn't want to have to deal with his feelings in that moment,
Yes.
and how do you feel like the two of you really got to kind of play around with that so much?
Well, we love it. I mean, I've said this before, but both of us independently pitched in the first season that those two should get up to something together because they're so diametrically opposed. Yet they do have so many similarities in terms of their yearning for money and for power and singularity and they're natural enemies. So of course they're going to be very combustible partners and we love playing it. We've been really blown away by how much the fans love it. So yeah, H money, the H money shippers, the Treddy shippers there will be more for them to enjoy this season for sure.
And that shift to the two of them coming up with the idea of, we're going to be power friends because we know how to play everyone,
Yeah.
did that give you a lot of spaces and layers to play between, because it's like the two of them against the rest of the other ghosts, but the other ghosts have no idea what's going on between them.
Oh yeah, they have no idea, nor do I think they really care, which is even more funny. And again, I think Asher and I have always maintained it would be it's so much juicier and more interesting, and we'll have frankly more longevity if we're not actually a couple ever, but we have this connection. We're always checking in with one another. And so we just continue to plant seeds like that. And the writers have, taken note and given us the fun things like the Power Friends thing. And there's some more things coming up this season too.
And so much of the day to day as well obviously revolves around, we've all been stuck here for so long that the most random things or small things can suddenly be so exciting and so interesting. And I remember when Hetty first saw Alberta ogling Pete, and it's like she physically moves closer to her on the couch to be like, tell me everything. This is the highlight of like the entire week for me right now. And how do you kind of find those little moments of the levels of how exciting something's going to be based on the experience of the regular monotony?
Well, monotony is the word. We're trapped together for likely all eternity, and we are each other's world. I realize I'm quoting the thing where Isaac said, "Hetty, that was a dog food commercial," but we're so incompletely wrapped up as this in this universe. We're like an organism there. So things are incredibly high stakes, and also I love it when we can lean into the boredom of it. We would love to have episodes where we just are. One thing we pitched was, what if just some normal thing is going on at the B&B or at the restaurant or whatever, but in the background, there's this very like violent game of tag happening and you just see the ghost randomly in the background tackling each other. Like we must have to come up with all kinds of zany things to do just to pass the time. And so we love things like that.
And even just for all of you as actors, I think it's such a testament to the show that essentially you're filming in the same few rooms for the majority of the time because there's a physical
Mhm.
parameter as to how far any of the ghosts except for Pete can go. And yet it still always feels new and interesting. And how do you make the location of a singular house over the course of several seasons kind of still feel like something that's being used in new and different ways as a show?
Well, I mean, testament to the writers, testament to like the collective strength of us as an ensemble, and also to our production designer, Zoe Sacalaropoulos. I love singing her praises. I will never stop doing it because our show, I think, looks like a film. And there's so many, I think of the mansion as being the 11th major character in the show. There's so many layered details and stories in that house. And I, of course, think about this a lot because it's my character's home. The basement is literally littered with the skeletons of her closet. And you'll meet one of them at Halloween, by the way, teaser, teaser. You're going to meet the mummy. I'll go ahead and say the
I can't
mummy.
wait.
Yeah, it's not good. um, but yeah, so we're very lucky with the craftspeople that have put together the look of the show and the feel of those rooms. They're very rich, and we've never been bored in one of them.
And you almost feel like the muscles that you kind of use as an actor feel quite different working on a show like this, because even just the way that you physically move around a space is very different playing ghosts, you know, and it's that thing where obviously you're not interacting with the props unless you're filming a flashback sequence. And so how does that make you just think about using a space and using, you know, your castmates around you in a different way than you normally would?
I think you use it. I mean, I have a dance background. I come from a dance theater background. So I think a lot about just tableau and like my relationship to my own body and the shape I'm making in space and how it relates to how close to someone else I am. There's so much story that can be told there. Um, and yeah, but I miss props. I'm a big furniture mover as an actor. God, I love to move a piece of furniture, but haven't been able to do that in a while. Although when we were shooting the Holes Are Bad episode, there was the one flashback before things get really dire where she's packing up, or having her butler pack up her house because she's going to try to, flee the law. I just let me touch this. I just had this thing and they cut most of it, but I was just touching all of my belongings because I finally could. So yeah, I do miss that. But in its absence comes a whole other gift.
I also wanted to ask about scenes in episodes where Hetty's husband, Elias, comes back into play with Matt Walsh, because I know as an actor you love sharing scenes with him and get very excited. But then obviously for Hetty, it's her worst nightmare to be
Yeah.
literally and figuratively haunted by her husband in that way.
He's the worst. No, Matt is obviously incredibly talented, incredibly funny, iconically funny. We love him. We love playing pickleball with him. He's very good. And yeah, it's great. I mean, again, the challenges for an actor are the things that are the juiciest to play. So
Yeah. There's also a lot with Hetty in terms of, you know, the way that she can be very staunch with her opinions and she can be very direct. And, you know, at times it creates obstacles in her relationships or misunderstandings in situations. And, you know, but because, like, going back to what you were talking about at the beginning, there's been these little evolutions and changes. How do you feel like that scope of what's an obstacle from her own opinions or her own directness has really changed and shifted over several seasons?
Well, the Irish thing for sure.
Yeah.
The fact that women should or should not have the right to vote. I mean, women's rights across the board. She's completely done a 180, I think, and that's because of her relationships with the other female ghosts and with Rose McIver's character in the show. And that's one of my favorite things. I love working with the other women. I love um, the unique perspectives from those particular three periods in American history, um, and how they can, bump up against one another and inspire growth. So yeah, she's had quite a few turnarounds.
And even to your point as well, you know, the relationship with Sam, the way that she responded to Sam at the very beginning of season one to now, where she's so protective of this friendship that she has with her, is so different. What do you feel like the most recent biggest changes to that relationship have been for you?
I think she might respect her opinion a bit more, and respect that she is a working woman. And but make no mistake, she still holds her to task for wearing a horrible sweater and, and not having her hair done right. I mean, she's the surrogate mother figure that, can be all the things at once.
Yeah. And you were describing how early on, you and Asher had kind of pitched the idea of something happening between, Hetty and Trevor. And when you had the entire storyline of Hetty's death, that was something that the writers kind of really involved you in. What does that relationship look like with, your showrunners, the Joes, and the writers, going into season 5 in terms of just the conversations that you get to have around this character?
They always want to have a conversation with us in advance of their writer's room starting, which I love. And they want to hear, just in terms of how the machine works, because they're in LA and we're in Montreal, just, how we feel like, the day could run smoother and be more productive and be happier. Although, as we've all said, it's a very happy set. But they also love hearing our pitches. And, and yeah, I think they listen to them. So I can't quite tell you what all my pitches were this past season because I don't want to spoil the whole season for you. Not that they took all my ideas by far, but
That's totally fair, even though I'd love to know. I also, separately to the show, wanted to ask you about the work that you've done with the Creative Coalition, because I know that you recently went to DC, and a lot of the work that you're doing with them as an organization is very much to do with advocating for funding in the arts. And I was just curious in hearing a little bit more about the work that you've done with them.
Well, I'm so glad I was asked. This year was my first year going, and I was so nervous to go, to be honest with you. There's so many incredibly articulate, intelligent people that work with that organization, deeply inspiring. And the president, Tim Daly, is one of the most well-spoken, compelling messengers for this idea and this advocacy that Creative Coalition does, basically to prevent the defunding of the NEA and to try to articulate to lawmakers and their staffs why it is imperative that there be federal funding for the arts. And in all honesty, I learned so much. I'll be honest with you. I learned a lot more about how our government works. I learned how many incredibly young people are in positions of influence there on staffs of senators and representatives. I found all that to be incredibly fascinating. And the things that I learned about, I'm a product of arts education in public schools. I am 100% a product of community theaters that received NEA funding. But what I learned really, really gobsmacked me. And like, in terms of the overall budget for the NEA is very small, comparatively speaking. It's just, I think, $207 million for every congressional district in the country. And that money is seed money. It's like a good housekeeping seal of approval that if a small local arts organization or something that is helping arts therapy for veterans or retired people, they get a small grant and then they can then use that grant and go out and raise private funds. So in all of these communities, for every single dollar that is spent in federal funding, it multiplies ninefold. $9 comes back to the community. And the arts they're just a good bet financially. It's not charity and it's not luxury for artists. I believe very strongly in it, and I hope that it is not in jeopardy in years to come.
No, it's so interesting to hear all those details about it, and love all of the work that you do on Ghosts all the time, and very much
Thank
looking forward to the
you.
next season. So thank you so much, Rebecca. Appreciate it.
What a pleasure. Thank you so much.